Boom! What's up, everyone? Hello, welcome to Simulation. I'm your host, Alan Sakyan. We have a really exciting episode and guest today, Maya Ackerman. Hello.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alan.
Yes. Maya is really awesome, building really cool stuff into the world. We're excited to share it with you. We even have a demo. It's going to be really fun. So Maya's background is in computer science, doctorate at Waterloo, and then became an assistant teaching professor at Florida State University, Santa Clara University, and founded and CEO of WaveAI, which has a product called Alysia right now, which is a songwriting AI. So really simple, you can just go to tryalysia.com and type in lyrics, and then the AI will produce a melody for you, and then you own that music. And right now it's free.
Yeah.
Which is really generous of you. Eventually, we're gonna definitely pay so that you can sustain, the business can sustain, and we can keep. Look at this logo. It's really cool, very futuristic, and then a music note along with the human singing. It's really nice.
Oh, thank you so much, Alan. I really appreciate it.
We're excited to chat with you about all of this. So maybe tell us a bit about the background, how you actually, as you're at Waterloo, were you thinking like, I want to be an entrepreneur? How did you get to where you're at?
I think of all the different career paths I've considered, an entrepreneur was never on the map. Somehow. Originally, I wanted to be a product manager. That was sort of my goal going to university. Then I fell in love with math in undergrad. I just thought it was the most amazing thing. I don't know if you ever heard of graph theory. So you basically have nodes and edges, and you can create all these structures. And I thought it was just the most incredible thing on the planet. Ended up doing my master's in theoretical machine learning. Had no idea that machine learning was hot and was going to become this revolutionary thing that everybody learns whether they're interested or not. So then during my PhD, I continued that. I really fell in love with research and with this idea of making a real impact on the academic community. This thought that there could be something in my mind that nobody has ever thought before, that I could really contribute something brand new, was just so exhilarating for me as a PhD student. But around the middle of my PhD, there was a very sharp turn when I started taking voice lessons, just for fun on the side. And
you weren't an opera singer before before your PhD?
No. So I already had a family and a child, and I was doing my PhD, and people for some reason assume that everything you do you need to start when you're 5. Well, I guess not.
Yeah.
And so I remember taking my first voice lesson and realizing that I had so much to learn, and I would spend at least an hour singing every day, to the dismay of my neighbors, because I wasn't very good at the time. But after 9 months of working very, very hard, I became semi-professional. I was really shocked to realize.
9 months and semi-professional?
Yeah.
That's really impressive. Most people can't get semi-professional in 9 months in anything. That's really good.
Oh, thank you. It just sort of happened. People suddenly were willing to pay for me to sing, so that was this shocking thing. But my lives were completely disjoint. There was computer science, which had nothing to do with the arts at the time. I was doing theory, basically a blend between computer science and math. And then there was singing, music in a very, very human way that was not really in any way interacting with technology. And it was a little bit disorienting, to be honest. For years, for about 3 to 4 years, it was just these two parallel lives with no interaction. Then I was attending ITA. It's a workshop on information theory and applications in San Diego.
Cool.
And there was a very small segment about the arts as it relates to information technology. And I was completely floored. I saw Harold Cohen, who unfortunately passed away recently, who created Aaron, the system that paints. He created it before it was easy to do. He had these robot arms moving around. And he was standing there having an argument with himself about whether or not his Aaron is being creative or not. And I was just totally blown away. I didn't care if it was creative or not, but I just cared that somebody was so passionate about this argument. Then there was Mark Riddell talking about his storytelling system, and there was Gerard talking about the music system. I waited until everybody left, and I followed them until they told me a whole bunch of stuff about computational creativity and where do I learn more. And so over the summer, I went to the International Conference on Computational Creativity, having no publications
There's
there.
an international conference on computational creativity.
Oh yeah,
Every year?
it is mind-blowing.
Where is it?
Well, it's different places.
Okay.
This year it's going to be in Spain.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm going to be in Spain in June.
Awesome, in June.
This time, the first time,
That's a great place to bring simulation, to go and talk to all these brilliant people. Maybe we should figure out how to do that. That sounds so cool, because like you were describing, seeing a robot painting and then having the person arguing, is it being creative right now? I can't, is it, etc. And then having that with other things like songwriting and all the computational creativity, the essence of that's so cool.
Oh yeah, it completely transformed my life. I was like, this exists? It has occurred to me to combine art or music with computers. I just had no idea there was a meaningful way to do it that would actually be worth my time. By the way, about Harold Cohen, he was standing there essentially screaming that other people were saying that his system was creative, and he was the only voice of reason saying that it's not. It was just
so cool.
Breathtaking live theater, except real. Is really just so inspiring. The passion. Oh.
Yeah.
Anyways. So yeah, you should definitely go to the conference. You'd meet all these just brilliant minds.
Yeah.
So on the way to the International Conference on Computational Creativity, I spilled, I believe it was tea on my laptop. And so my laptop was dead. And so I go to the first talk and I don't have anything to distract myself with. And so I just sit there and listen. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I guess we should all do that more often.
Good old days, yeah.
Yeah. And completely in passing, the speaker mentioned, so that obviously we don't have to think about a computer as just a tool. You could be a co-creative partner, perhaps in a similar way to a human.
Yes. And there's all, what I was just reading about AlphaZero as well, is that the way that it's thinking in new dimensionalities, like sacrificing a queen and a bishop to gain a positional advantage. It's like an alien playing chess. The way that a human can co-create with that at the same time to learn, and then have the AI assist, the human assist, etc. It's very applicable to all this computational creativity and songwriting and all these other artistic forms. So that's really exciting, that hybrid of those two.
Exactly, you're absolutely right. You know, this was the first time I was introduced to the concept, but since then, exactly like you're saying, I'm hearing more and more people express a combination of human and machine as the real powerhouse, as the real direction, not only because us humans don't want to be left behind, but because that's how we achieve real greatness. Mm-hmm. So that's that instant, everything changed for me. You know, those pivotal moments in life?
Yeah.
I've been trying to write original songs for years as a musician, and it never occurred to me that a computer could be helpful for that. The moment I had the idea, it became so obvious to me that it's possible to do it. So I got home, I talked to David, who's one of our co-founders right now, and within 3 months we had a very early prototype.
Cool.
And I could write songs. It was this mind-blowing experience.
With just words as input.
Just words as input.
Now, the background's great, and it totally makes sense how you got into computational creativity. Maybe you teach us a bit about how I write in a word, and then how do we pick with a certain amount of confidence what note would work well with the word? How does this work?
How does this work? Very good question. I like it that you have this insight into machine learning. This is
just
so great.
A little bit, very small.
It shows that you do. So, yes, machine learning is fundamentally about prediction. So the classical example where a lot of the money is at goes back to the stock market. Let's predict, is the stock going up or down? Let's predict if you're going to want to listen to a particular song or watch a particular movie. Mm-hmm. Prediction. Mm-hmm. How do we take machine learning, which is geared towards prediction, and use it to generate, use it to create instead? Well, the trick is actually pretty simple. We're going to ask it to predict the next note, and we're going to agree with it. Then we're going to ask it, now predict the next note. Mm-hmm. And we're going to agree with it again. And that's how it ends up generating. Now, of course, there's a lot of subtlety in here, because if it always predicts the same thing, we could only ever get one melody out of it. So the way that you build the model, you want to make sure that you get a lot of exploration.
Yeah. Okay, and let's say that we write lyrics like, I love San Francisco. Let's say those are a 4-word lyric for now. Now, how do you assign a certain note to I, to love, to San, and to Francisco?
That's right. So the simplest way is to assign one note per syllable.
Per syllable?
Per syllable, that's right. Yeah. We don't always do that.
Francisco. So there's like 6 syllables in that. Okay.
That's the basic approach. Now, sometimes that's not what you want, especially in some modern genres. You want multiple notes for syllables. Sometimes in opera, you want to say San Francisco.
That was
just for fun.
Thank you. We got to get a little bit more of that through the show. That's good. San Francisco.
So in principle, it's not always the case. It's not 100%, but that's a basic model.
Okay. All right. Let's go through a demo.
That would be wonderful.
No, keep going for a bit, and then we'll go through the demo.
Oh well,
okay.
If we're taking a tiny.
Yeah.
I'm gonna. If you could just for the introduction. Teaching assistant professor means something different than assistant professor in the crazy academic world.
Teaching assistant professor
means that you don't do research.
And that's what you...
And it's not what I am.
You're assistant teaching professor.
There's no teaching.
Assistant professor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
okay, so because you do AI research.
I do research,
exactly.
yeah. So for most people, it's going to make no difference. But just for academics who listen, they know the difference and they'll think that it's a lesser role.
Yeah, assistant professor means you do research. Teaching assistant professor means you don't do research.
Means you just teach, yeah.
Oh, cool,
exactly.
cool, okay.
Yeah, so if it's okay, we could redo just a little part.
Yeah, exactly. Or even now, like what we just said, I think will be okay, but and we'll write in the bio the difference, but yeah.
Yeah, I'd appreciate if you, I don't know, just a little one sentence.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. No, it's really okay. Okay, so what do you think, Ron, in terms of time for the...
You ready for the demo?
Let's do it.
Okay, let me try to do this. Here we go. Right there, over there, and we got here, and I'm going to roll it.
Is there any way to attach my computer to it? Because I have a more recent version.
Of this?
Of Alysia. Yeah. Or I can just send you a link to a more recent version.
We can do that, yeah.
Because it has drums and it makes it up.
You're all I need, the breath I breathe. Trust our love's enough, believe in us. Craziness, you'll make me this, addict for, you'll makes me sick. Wanna know, you so adore, you can't afford to take this hit. And I admit the things you play me, might have paid me quite a bit, but not enough to give you up. And though it's tough, I never quit. Friends say leave, they got a bias view. No, I'm rolling the dice, but I bet on you. Every time it's a crime, all the crime I do to keep your mind on the shine when I'm next to you. And even to say it, find I'm obsessed with you. Get high with me and try and you ignite my fuse. Look for a sign, cause I'm so confused. But when you try to say goodbye, I just try and refuse. You're all I need, the breath I breathe. Trust our love's enough, believe.
Cool. So, all right, so we see there's a lot that's going into this. There's a lot. So someone decided to write those lyrics, and then you guys decided to figure out what were the right, and you said there's a version with drums as well, so there's all these synths, there's piano, there's guitar, there's drums, there's all these different options that you can add in as the notes. So how do you also pick between the instruments?
That's right. So instruments, well, have you seen how the system works? Have I had a chance to show it to you?
No.
Okay.
Should we do that?
That would I think be really great to give you and the viewers.
Can we pull up the web browser and go to tryalysia.com?
I can't import it. The viewers won't be able to see it. This is pre-production.
Pre-production stuff. It's okay. We'll do it. We'll do it soon. We'll get better at this over time. So, okay, we'll do some pre-production stuff next time. We'll get you to see what's actually going on with tryalysia.com. But in the meanwhile, the link's in the bio, so you can always go to tryalysia.com and check this out yourself. But let's get just a verbal explanation of it.
Yeah, so the way it works is you come in and you type in lyrics, And then Alysia gives you many different options for that line of lyrics. So in particular, it gives 25 options that we've selected from the hundreds that we generate in the background.
And then I can go and listen to these different options, see what feels best.
That's right, yeah,
Okay.
because ultimately, you're the creator.
Mm-hmm.
The computer is there to help fill in things that are either difficult for us that we don't specialize in, or just to save time. So you type in your first line of lyrics, pick a melody for that, and then there are various ways you can tweak the melody as well. And then you type in your next line, and again select a melody for your next line.
Cool.
So you piece it together like a puzzle. And as a result, people who've never written a song before, who've never touched a musical instrument, can write the vocal line for an original song. Then you can pick an instrument for it, add drums, and eventually, well, over the next few weeks, you'll be able to add the chord progressions to flesh out the song as much as possible.
Okay, so the general idea is that I write a lyric at a time, or a kind of a phrase at a time, a sentence at a time of, of the lyrics, and then I get 25 different options of what you guys predict would sound good with that. I get to pick the one that I think's best, and then we go on to the next line, the next phrase. Now, would there typically be wouldn't there be a scenario where if I pick, let's say, one of the 25 that sounds the best with the first line, and then with the second line, it would probably be something close to what the first line, to what I picked for the first line. So then you learn and you pick, or you choose like maybe 25 that sound somewhat similar.
Exactly. They're based on your choices.
From the first one to the second one to the third one. Because otherwise it would be, the 25 different ones.
It would just be all over the place.
All over the place,
That's right.
Yeah,
and you also have the option of taking an existing sub-melody and replicating it, intentionally putting in repetition.
Okay.
So it's like turning something really complicated into something that only relies on your ability to tell whether you like it or not.
Oh, cool.
So you're
that's a good way to put it.
You don't have to generate anymore. Computers are amazing at generating. They're not as good at evaluation. But humans are amazing at evaluation. Somebody who has absolutely no musical experience can tell if they like a song or not.
Correct, yeah.
And so that's where it's a collaboration.
I love that. That we have the capacity to feel and evaluate way more than we do to be able to actually write the song with all of the different complexities and instruments and melodies and all that stuff. So, cool.
Well, I remember when I was trying to write songs, and I really put in a lot of effort. I took improv lessons, piano improvisation, I got a whole bunch of books. My problem is that I simply wouldn't come up with enough interesting variation. I had a really hard time exploring the space. And the computer, when you set it up right, it's just so good at it.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of that workload off of our brain of figuring that out. And then we get to just feel and evaluate what we like. That's cool.
And sometimes I test the software or I do a little demo for somebody, and it's just so beautiful. I just keep it and then expand it into a whole song.
Yeah. Man. Okay, so how many songs have currently been generated?
Oh, I don't even know. It's in the thousands. We've had we've about 600-700 people on Alysia right now.
Cool.
And there are so many songs being created every day. But very recently, actually, just this Saturday, we had a contest that has ended.
Yeah, we saw that. We saw it all. Yeah,
that's right.
The contest ended, but there will be potentially another one
Oh,
soon?
definitely. When we roll out our lyrics maker, over the next few weeks, we'll have a sub-component of Alysia Lyrics. It'll make it very easy to write lyrics. And once we have that, we'll have a second contest. Yeah.
Lyrics maker because if the lyrics are being chosen as well, then what role do I even have? Just evaluating which one sounds good with the lyrics and the melody, and then picking that and keep going and picking. Because if I'm not even writing the lyrics, then...
Well, then what are you doing? Well, there's so much to songwriting that goes just so much. You need to write the lyrics, you need to write the melody, you need to write the overall structure of the song, do the drum track, produce the song, sing the song. Hardly anybody can do all of this.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm the singer. I would personally be happy if somebody else took care of everything else and I would just sing. But that doesn't mean that everybody wants that.
Yep.
Somebody else might be a poet. They don't want help with that part. Somebody might have no problems coming up with melodies. In fact, a lot of people that I talk to struggle with melody writing, and then there's a whole separate group of people who struggle with lyrics. But just like with the melody writing, we're not trying to give you fully cooked lyrics. It's an iterative process. In fact, the version that we're considering right now, I've had an early prototype last year where I type in one line of lyrics, and then I have Alysia propose 25 options for the next line of lyrics. And then for each subsequent one, I can either have Alysia propose the next one, or if I want to, I can interject my own ideas. I can alter what Alysia gave. We're not doing this to serve the AI is serving us. So we only use it as much as it's helping us create what we want.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're constantly, even if the lyrics are being generated and giving us options and melodies are being generated, giving us options, we're doing the evaluation and we're picking out what we think would sound and feel good for us.
We really need that. Humans, another weakness of machines, especially when it comes to generation, is they're much behind humans when it comes to big picture stuff, especially with text generation. But if a human is in the loop, for humans it's so easy to tell if sentences fit together, if they make sense as part of a whole.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. These weaknesses will soon also be they'll be less prevalent. I'm wondering when the human gets out of the loop of songwriting in general.
That's a really good question, and I think people feel so passionately about it, and I completely understand why. I think that, first of all, as far as creating background music, so songs without lyrics, there's a long history in the research community of automated systems writing complete musical songs, but without any lyrics, without any singing. There is early work by David Cope from Santa Cruz, imitating the style of Bach and Vivaldi and creating this beautiful background music.
Yeah.
So to some degree it has happened, but to a very small degree. We don't have any computer-generated songs on the radio, and we won't anytime soon. I think it's a matter of emphasis. It's sort of a matter of what we're looking for and the quality that we're going for. As far as where we get the best results, we get it by collaborating with machines, not by having them go beginning to end. But there is progress being made in that direction as well, because that's what some people are interested in, so that's what they focus on as well. Yeah.
So right now there's several hundred people using this, 1,000, and it's going well. What do you foresee as some of the new additions? You said the lyric generator is a new addition into it. What are the other kind of additions that you're thinking about putting in there?
Well, chord progressions. We're working on that right now. So both lyrics and chord progressions. We have developers focusing on both of these. Because then you come in and you can have help with each one of these really complicated things and really letting you focus on the parts that you like most. And eventually, for those who want that kind of support, we want to be able to create the entire background track. Oh, another very, very important thing is if a producer already created a background track, we want to be able to take that background track, feed it into Alysia, and have Alysia create the vocal melody on top of that, to kind of support the other direction.
The other direction, yeah. Huh. Because there are so many instrumentals that don't have lyrics over them, which is interesting, because then you could just plug those in and see what the AI thinks would work well as lyrics over those instrumentals. Okay, what about a monetization model? What are you thinking to be able to sustain the business?
Well, I think if we can, we're always going to keep a freemium, something that's available for everybody, because ultimately the internet and a lot of technology is about making great things available for everyone.
Definitely.
And to whatever degree possible, we're going to have a lot of things that are available for free. People will come in and play, and if they can't afford to pay for anything, then they don't need to. For people who want the more advanced features, who want access to everything all the time, we're probably going to be looking at a subscription model.
Like 10 a month or 20 a month?
Yeah, about 10 a month. But that's to be determined.
Yeah. That's fair. I think so. Especially for people that want to use more features. There might even be a tiered $10 a month version, then maybe $25 a month for people that really want everything and direct contact with your team, all that cool stuff. So
yeah, I mean, in principle, we can do amazing things. We can take what we have, and we've done that in the past. We've retrained it on the music of Giacomo Puccini, and we created Italian aria out of it. So that's something that we could also make available as a service.
Oh yeah, people could pay you thousands of dollars to go and parse music sets from around the world, and then you could create the platform for them to use with their cultural music set that they like.
Exactly, and we can go different human languages. So there's a lot of opportunities for people who want to dig very deep, primarily musicians. But then we want it to be accessible to everybody. We want it to be also useful for everybody, so that somebody who has no musical expertise whatsoever could still come in and express themselves creatively. Perhaps make a song for their loved one.
What do you think about the current state? Like, let's talk about what genres of music you typically have right now.
Oh, as in what genres can be used,
with Alysia,
be used for? Well, one very interesting thing that I learned is that there is some flexibility in the relationship between melodies and genres. So when you talk to composers, they would often tell you that if a melody is genuinely good, then it will work in many different genres. And we've seen examples of that in the past. Because a lot of the genre comes from the way that the singer sings it, the kind of background music. Does it include drums? How fast is the background music going? What instruments are chosen? And this is just so central to the genre that it ends up sounding like.
Yeah.
That being said, it is also interesting for us to consider subgenres separately. At one point we had Alysia trained on pop, and it trained on Puccini music, which we started exploring early because I sing opera and I love Puccini. So, and then we accidentally blended them.
How was that?
And I was thinking to myself, what is this? I can't tell which data we're using right now. Yeah. It was amazing. It was actually really good as a mixed model.
And people aren't doing this in the world. Pop and opera?
Not really. I haven't seen that.
So there's also this cool computational creativity might lead us down mixing genres that we would never thought of before.
Exactly. So we are going to offer separate genres and ultimately the ability to blend them as well.
That's so interesting.
Currently, it's trained on a mixed bag of primarily pop.
Primarily pop right
now. Pop, rock.
And rock.
Yeah, a few genres that work well together.
What do you think about the current culture of music? Right now, there's so much of the, money and sex and drugs and stuff involved in our music scene. What do you think about the current status of that and kind of where it's transitioning to? Does your AI predict like sex and bitch and like all the like?
It's so funny because we're dealing with lyrics right now.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to my co-founder David, who is focusing on this project, and he says, we're gonna have to censor some of these words. Yeah, so we're going to need to make some choices around that. That's interesting that you picked up on that. Yeah, definitely. Those are some choices that we'll have to make. Now that I think of it, perhaps that should be the user's choice if they would want language like that or not. I don't know if we should be making that decision for users long term, but perhaps at first we might censor it more heavily to not, not mislead users.
Or maybe just have a select on or off feature.
Exactly.
That's
let the user decide. I think that's probably the best way to go.
I would keep mine always on or always on so that I could get the dirty lyrics.
Oh, you know what?
The dirty version.
This reminded me. I was doing some research with Rafael Perez of Paris, actually. Fascinating man. You should meet him. And we were looking at, we created this lyrics maker together, also with my student, Divya. And we were comparing some other system to ours. And there's this wonderful system, there's actually a few of them, that writes lyrics for rap in particular. And humans found it to be more emotionally engaging. I think it's just because we thought about it for a long time. What is it about rap lyrics and these rap lyrics generation that makes people feel something? Well, the language. The words are so provocative that we can't help but feel something, which could perhaps explain why there's so much prevalence of it in popular culture, because it's so much easier to provoke emotion if we can resort to language like that. But on the other hand, it also represents what people are feeling, and perhaps it helps them expand their repertoire in general.
Maybe we can choose words that hit people's emotions and that expand their consciousness to new dimensions of thought. That's exciting stuff that I care about a lot. How can we put lyrics into music that are really impactful?
Yeah, we thought also about intentionally creating socially impactful music.
I love that idea. That could be another filter to turn on. That's cool.
That would be definitely very feasible, and I think I would love to support certain causes like the environment. We could write songs about the environment.
So then you take a big corpus of the language that's used in social activism, and then that's kind of what the AI learns off of and then plugs.
You can do really amazing things. You can train your system on lyrics and then have it lean towards the environmental corpus. You can sort of blend.
Okay.
Yeah. So that it's still lyrics, but suddenly it's more likely to talk about the environment.
Yeah, okay. All right, so maybe a little bit more on how it works, because this is really interesting to understand. So how many voices are there that the AI will choose to sing with the lyrics?
Okay, so currently it's more of a composition aid. So we recently added some sound fonts. I think there's about 12 of them.
You call it a sound font.
Sound font.
Okay.
Beautiful word, right?
It's cool.
Like written font, but sound font.
Font, yeah.
Yeah, we're working with Dusty, actually, the guy who produced the music.
Okay.
Yeah, so Alysia composed and he produced. So he's made a whole bunch of sound fonts for us, and we're making one with my voice that would sing, whatever the melody is, it would sing it on an ah.
Yeah.
So it's really fun. But the user picks the sound font. And of course, ultimately, now that you're saying this, I think it would be interesting if the AI could suggest which sound font would go well with a particular song.
Yes.
Yeah.
So moving into hopefully like a dozen sound fonts or so for people to be able to select.
Yeah, that's where we're at more or less right now. But on the other hand, you can also download it in MIDI format, open it up in GarageBand, FL Studios, whatever is your favorite DAW, and produce in any way you like.
So I can take the file you give me and open up how you put things together and then move things around myself.
Exactly. So for those viewers who know how to produce, it's designed to support this.
That's good. Very modular then.
Yeah.
For people to take the content you make and then.
And we're looking into shortly creating some plugins so it will plug right into their digital audio workstation.
What would that look like? Oh, so into GarageBand.
Yeah, it becomes part of GarageBand or FL Studios,
cool.
and then it's right there. So the production and the composition, they get joined, and then it's the producer / songwriter. That's a gold standard to be able to do everything.
Okay, so all right, let's do a little bit more on how it works. So I write the I love San Francisco, and then after I write that, then how do you assign to each syllable? How does it learn what note would best go? How does it pick those first 25 that I get to then listen to? That's
right. So it learns from existing songs. It goes through hundreds of thousands of examples.
And so if it saw I love, and then it heard all of the times that it said that in different songs it was used I love, and then it can kind of pick.
Well, I think you're getting exactly the right idea. Exactly. Except that we have to be a little bit careful because while I love might appear hundreds of times, this plant is tall might not.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to give melodies no matter what the user gives us, even if it's an exceptionally rare word. And so the way deep learning works is you could utilize a combination of features. So some of the features it can figure out by itself. With other models, you need the user to provide the features. So you would tell the system what kind of stuff should it be looking for. And then the model itself takes your advice into consideration of what features it should be considering, and it decides ultimately what's important. Are the previous notes important? Is it important that the word is common or not? Things like that.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it takes into account the context, like we were talking about this Pareto distributions of words. Had we mentioned the Pareto distriction yet? No, that was in the previous.
Yeah.
It was in our previous talk with Rodney. Just at 2 o'clock, we mentioned Pareto distributions, and very, very much so directly applies to linguistics and what you're doing. George Ziff from Harvard came up with Ziff's law, and it follows a Pareto distribution of that. The things like 80% of all of language is only 20% of all words, like the, of, and, to, which, yeah. So that makes it easier then for you to know what 20% of words are most used in lyrics, and then the harder words are the ones that are less used, like quizzaciously and like things like that.
Well, the interesting thing is that music often focuses on the rare words.
Yeah.
So it's whenever you have, boring words like articles, they're rarely emphasized. But then once you have the word you just mentioned, for example, quizzaciously, there's no way you could have it in there without some interesting melody on top of it.
Yeah, it's like 4 syllables.
Yeah, if a songwriter chooses to add an interesting word, they will often emphasize it, and that's actually something that we learned through building Alysia. That being said, you have words like love that appear over and over again, on which it's easier for Alysia to do a good job because you see lots of examples.
Yep. And then, okay, so words that have more examples that Alysia has learned from, and the learning data set comes from where?
So there are a lot of songs out there. So we're actually building out a new corpus right now that's going to be, just for us. But originally we were lucky to find some existing research data sets.
Oh, cool.
From a whole bunch of songs, a very large data set, about 6,000 songs.
Awesome.
So that's really helped us kind of push Alysia along. But right now we're stepping back and rebuilding our own data because ultimately everything starts and ends with high quality data.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can only learn as well as the information that you receive, right?
Yeah. It's a great way to put it, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. What are you choosing to learn?
Yeah, so we're gonna definitely have a good corpus for very popular genres. That's the most important. That's going to be our initial focus. But ultimately, the longer we do it, the more we'll be able to offer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, all right, so now we have the I love San Francisco. We see that love is used so many times, San Francisco is used, and then maybe quizzaciously is used way less than the other one, so it's more difficult to find the right notes for every syllable.
Well, it doesn't mean that it's more difficult because the learning is more complicated than that. It doesn't memorize. That's very, very important. Machine learning models don't memorize. So if all it did was to go through the corpus and look at how often it saw certain words, and would only be able to perform well in those cases, that would be memorizing. The whole point is that it can extract general principles so that if you give it stuff it's never seen before, it can still do a good job.
Okay, cool.
That's really key.
Yeah. Yeah, the general principles are key.
Exactly. It's about the learning. What can be generalized? And actually, machine learning people, all of us, I teach my students, you make sure that your model doesn't overfit. Because if it's overfitting, it means it's memorizing. And the way that you evaluate it, in case you're curious.
This is cool.
Is you always keep out some part of the data. You intentionally don't learn on it. And then you check how well is your model doing on this held out set compared to the training set. And if there's a big gap, then you're just memorizing. We want to avoid that at all costs.
Yeah. So you want there to be a little gap.
Well, you want as little gap as possible because you want it to do nearly as well on the data that it has not seen, because that means it's not memorizing. It can handle data it hasn't seen about as well as it's handling data that it has seen. So it's not overfitting. Yeah, it's really, really key. Yeah.
You don't want it to overfit. You want it to either fit or like slightly underfit.
Well, you want it to generalize. The opposite of overfitting is generalizing in machine learning, meaning that it learned, it didn't memorize. It learned some general principles. Because think about it, machine learning is backwards. Usually you go to a math class, they give you the rules, and then you apply the rules in specific examples. From rules to data. Machine learning is backwards. You got the data, you're making up the rules. So we need to make sure that these, and we have to use the word rules carefully, right? Because it's machine learning. The machine learning system is figuring out.
It's a generalization.
Exactly, a generalization, because the word rules has another meaning in computer science. But it's figuring out how this data was created. And so we want to make sure that this generalizes to brand new data very well, and that's a key. The only thing that matters is how well it generalizes. It doesn't matter how well it does on data that it has seen, that it has learned on.
So when new data is inputted into Alysia, then you try and see how well you can generalize.
Well, we check it ourselves before giving it to people.
Cool.
We very, very thoroughly check how well it does on data that it has not learned on.
Okay, so you have a team that looks at the new data that's input into
Oh,
Alysia.
it's the same machine learning people, right? It's,
they're looking at it and seeing how well you fit generalizations of music, melodies, and even lyrics soon to
data that has not been seen. Absolutely, because that's everything.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I get to teach a little machine learning. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. Very basic 101.
I teach machine learning at Santa Clara, so you know.
Yeah. Okay. And so for let's say for a word like, San Francisco, let's say that how do you figure out if you want to add a piano or a drum or which instrument works?
So we don't do that right now.
Okay.
We just don't, right? We focus on composition because, there are many different solutions for that. We do eventually want to get to automatic production for the people who don't specialize in production, so that they maybe they like to come up with lyrics, they type in their lyrics, they could piece together the melody, and then we could produce a whole background track for them. That would be nice down the line.
Cool.
But right now, there are digital audio workstations that are fantastic tools for picking instruments, for fleshing out songs.
Okay.
That's kind of our initial focus, is on people who enjoy the production aspect and who are looking for assistance with composition.
Yep. Okay. It's down the line, though.
Down the line, of course, yeah, because we want to make it. We want to empower people as much as possible, and I think people will always want and will always benefit from engaging as much as they can and are able to. But that amount is very different for different people.
Yeah.
Like I'm a singer, I don't necessarily want a Vocaloid to sing for me.
Yeah.
But there are other people who...
Vocaloid.
Vocaloid is a very cool part of music technology, something that sings like a human. It's amazing.
What was the first one? Song font or?
Sound font
font.
is how the instrument sounds.
Yeah.
And this is Vocaloid for singing. So you would have to give it the melody and the words, and it would sing it for you. They're really, really good in Japan. And the English market is gradually getting better.
Wow.
But then somebody else, maybe they're not a singer, and they could really use technology to help them with that. So we sort of need to be, I think, flexible to the fact that people need help in different areas, and we shouldn't be helping them with what they don't want, but we should be helping them with where they welcome the help.
Where else do you see computational creativity, especially what you're making? Where else can it be plugged into?
Computational creativity is enormous. I love the part that intersects with art. I think it's just so amazing that computers and AI can meaningfully interact in the art world and meaningfully help people. It's mind-blowing for me. So there's a lot of work going on in visual art. There's an amazing system called the Painting Fool. The Painting Fool.
The Painting Fool?
Fool. Fool, yeah.
The Painting Fool.
Yeah, there you go.
As in it's trying to trick people so that it doesn't know it's a computer doing it?
Oh, that's one way of looking at it, yes. Okay. It's created by Simon Colton, and the works of the Painting Fool have been displayed in galleries and even commissioned for hefty amounts.
Whoa.
So it's a whole universe out there.
Is it digital art or is it, wow.
Well, I can show you some of the works.
Gosh, that's
it looks
crazy.
Some of it looks like paintings, and what's really amazing to me, is that some of the art that the Painting Fool create would be very hard for a human to do.
Why?
It's something that has to do with very regular patterns that keep repeating in a very, very small scale.
Yeah.
That you keep zooming in and keep seeing that same pattern.
But it takes a lot of time for a human to.
Well, it's just the amount of how small they can go is not really
how small
real.
you can go to, and then
Yeah.
And then, for example, if you're drawing a circle really small, and then you're slowly increasing the size of the circle as you move downward, maybe you're making scales or something like that, right?
That's right,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really make sense for humans to do stuff like that. Not anymore.
Yeah.
But humans can focus on the kind of art that fits who we are. We are different. Us and computers are different. Our intelligence, our creativity is different. It doesn't directly compete. It's, as humans, it's so nice to imagine that we own intelligence, we own creativity, but that's a limiting perspective. There are other beings, computers included, that are intelligent and creative in a different way than us, and that's okay, that's beautiful.
Yes, I'm so curious to computational creativity taking a strong position or a position of excellence in design. So that's so interesting to me, because once the computational creativity is to a threshold that is acceptable by humans as beautiful or as well designed, once it gets to that point, then we can let Alysia computational creativity on how to make the best coffee table.
Well, there has been a little bit of work in that direction. There was, I think it was during the first international conference on computational creativity that I attended, that the speaker passed out little vases, and they were different vases that their system designed.
And then pass a tangible
physical vase.
And even in digital, this becomes so interesting, because then with this creative design, the best digital marketing assets don't preclude anyone else from having it. So then all of a sudden you have a new logo or a new website or have a new ad or a new banner or photo or whatever that is beautiful, that didn't even require a human. It's a design world. Didn't require a human to be a part of it.
Something about what you're describing.
Well, we still have the selection, right? We still have that part at the end, which is that we think that it's good value, and then humans decide that it's well done, and then.
That's right. So we definitely don't want to cut the human out of the loop. But when it comes to logo, that really struck me when you suggested that, because there is so much context that has to be understood for a logo.
Yes.
Which reminded me of the world's first computational creativity musical, which took place in London about a year ago. And they had, actually Simon Colton's the guy who created the painting Fool. His system came up with the main idea for the musical. So kind of a one line that's like a tag for what the musical is about. So that was done by machine. And then lots of other components of the musicals were also done by machine, including various components of the music. Alysia didn't exist, it was still very early at the time, so the lyrics and the melodies weren't integrated. There were other systems that were used, the various components, and the human musicians had to do a lot of the work as well. Computational creativity was also used, I believe, to create the overarching storyline of the musical. So they really tried to put in as many systems as possible, which was on the one hand amazing, and on the other hand showed us how much room for growth there is.
Yep.
Because in that process, the computer was sometimes helpful and sometimes a hindrance.
Yep.
And we obviously don't want the latter. What's the point, right? It was very interesting. But it had this sort of like needing to understand context element to it, which I think would be required for a lot of design issues.
Yep. You nailed it. Context will be a major aspect of how to design or whatever the creativity is. It has to learn what is the data set that the context is based on, and then how can it learn from that.
Are you familiar with Canva?
Canva?
Yeah. Canva, I don't believe that there's no AI in it that I'm aware of. But they've definitely made design of brochures or design, like visual design on paper. They made it so much more accessible.
Canva.com, right? Is that the site?
Yeah, I believe so.
And yeah, I've clicked through their different brochures, and there's all these different templates kind of.
It's truly excellent.
Yeah, it is good. I agree.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not about. I love AI, don't get me wrong, but I think it's important sometimes to realize that it's not about us serving the AI. It's not about us taking whatever the AI happens to give, but rather, what do we really need? How do we want computers to help us, and what are the best methods to get us there?
Yep.
And sometimes it's not AI, and that's, or at least it's not AI right now, and that's okay.
How can we better understand ourselves? Is good as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so. Okay, that's good. That's computational creativity. Seems like creativity is a major aspect of us making great leaps and strides and advancements in AI. Actually, it being creative or it having other features of what perceives to be consciousness.
Oh, consciousness. Sorry.
Where's the excitement coming from? Why is so much excitement?
Consciousness. I'm sorry. It's just, there are just so many words that we don't understand.
Yeah.
And we are only forced to examine them, at least, in my case, and, some people in my world who don't focus on consciousness until somebody questions whether an AI can ever have it. We have no idea what consciousness is. We don't. Sure, maybe some philosophers are a little bit closer to us than maybe I am, since I don't specialize in it. But as humanity, all we know is the experience. All I know is that I'm conscious. I have no idea if you're conscious. I have no idea if anybody is conscious or ever was conscious, because we can't define it properly. We can't break it down. It's considered often to be an emergent property. If it's an emergent property, why can't it emerge out of a very complicated AI with many components?
Correct.
I feel like, if I'm just being honest, I think the discussion about consciousness is heavily premature with AI.
Yeah, yeah. Do you concern yourself with ethics around how it's programmed? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, we don't need any consciousness to cause a lot of damage to humanity.
Yeah.
That can be done without consciousness.
Yeah, as we've seen.
So that's a very good point. And actually, Santa Clara University really focuses on ethics. And they got me thinking about a lot of these questions. I'm actually designing a course on artificial intelligence that I'm going to be starting to teach in 2 weeks, approximately. So I've been thinking about a lot of these questions. They're fresh on my mind. I think with something as powerful as artificial intelligence, there is so much responsibility. But the responsibility, I think it's very important to note, and that's where my opinion differs from some other people that I respect. The responsibility is not entirely on the people who create the artificial intelligence. The responsibility is on society as a whole. Perhaps the biggest challenges come around job loss with things like automated vehicles, which is a very complicated system. Of course, there's a lot of benefit to come from automated vehicles. But I think how we transition from a road full of humans to a road full of humans that are not driving anymore, that transition needs to be done gracefully. And our economy, the way that it's driven, it's a beautiful thing, our economy. It gives rise to amazing things like automated vehicles. But companies are incentivized to grow. Very, very heavily incentivized. In fact, if they don't grow, they disappear. So pretty much all major players try to grow as much as possible. And as a result, it becomes essential that government entities, or perhaps some other emerging entities in society, help people who lose jobs as a result of AI or any other development, help them re-educate, help them stay productive members of society. Whether it be through universal income, whether it be through aggressive re-education campaigns. But one way or another, as a society, it's our duty to take care of each other, with or without AI. First of all, it's about us humans taking care of ourselves and our world. And I think in as much as AI can help with that, that's great. But the process happens so quickly that sometimes we need other forms of support to make sure that we don't have a lot of negative consequences.
Do you think it's going to be part of what you teach?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. how are you going to teach? Yeah, go a little deeper into how you're going to help teach ethics to in programming to
my AI students.
Yeah.
I think the whole concept of pausing and thinking about the impact of the software that we are creating is not something that we're trying to do. There is over-optimism among software developers, machine learning engineers, etc., about the utility of progress. Overall, I mean, I'm a big fan of progress. I'm a researcher. Anything that has not been done, I mean, for me, it's almost a prerequisite for getting excited is that it's brand new and hasn't been done before. I don't know how I'd get excited about something that somebody's already done. But we should also, another dimension with progress is thinking, well, what's going to happen after it's built? How is it going to incorporate in society? How can I pivot what I do in the most positive way possible? Right? So it's a difference between creating music that AI makes by itself and creating a system that helps humans become better musicians.
Okay, so take into account something that you were saying earlier. You were describing a company growing and a company needing to grow in order to take risk and to make more money and to sustain itself in the world. How do we take that into account on a finite planet? So this finite resources on this planet, we haven't figured out how to manufacture absolutely everything from the molecular level up. We haven't figured out nuclear fusion. We haven't figured out how to create more energy than we use, all that stuff. So does this, tell us about your thoughts on the geopolitical and the geoeconomic systems of our planet as they foster more money and more power and more greed. Where do you think that should be in the next decade or two as, 8 people have as much wealth as the bottom 4 billion? What do we do about this? What are kind of your thoughts about it?
Let's start with the fact that money is fake. Money is supposed to be here to help humanity, right? So it's easier for people to pay each other with money than it is to exchange goods. It's just so much simpler. But of course, it has evolved far beyond that and became an entity with a lot of power all by itself. I think I'm not really in the business of predicting the future on large scales, but I think it's definitely a lot of options, some very pessimistic, some very optimistic. Perhaps the most optimistic thing that I've heard recently, it was somebody else's idea, sorry I don't recall the name. So one of the biggest problems we have, I mean, you were talking about resources in particular, is that overpopulation, right? So we have population growth. If everybody's doing well, perhaps they will all have more kids. All these companies are trying to become better than each other and keep growing. Where does this end, right? So one positive train of thought within all of this is that as countries become more developed,
population stabilize?
Yeah. Population stabilizes, exactly, because women become more empowered. And for whatever reason, when women are working full-time, when they are active member of society in exactly the same way as men, which we still have a long way to go, by the way, even here, but okay, we've come a long way. They start having less kids, fewer and fewer children. And so the result, we have fewer people to feed, ultimately. And so some people believe that population will stabilize, hopefully before it's too late. But when it stabilizes as part of such a positive movement, as part of an equality movement, as part of having women being equal to men, that's a win-win from all perspectives. As far as companies...
was it Dr. Jun Yoon that did the population
I can look that up. It was actually a video, a really fascinating video. I'll just forward it to you.
I wonder if it was Jun Yoon, because he's the one that taught it to me almost 2 years ago.
Well, perhaps that's who it is. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's fascinating. I love that. I love
optimism.
that. Yeah. It's continue where you were going. Yes.
On the other hand, we can't adopt the attitude that things are just going to work out. Let things loose and everything will be great, because sometimes it's not.
But then who should have control over?
Well, I think that's where we need perhaps some more social ideals. I mean, it doesn't have to be very extreme. It doesn't need to destroy our economy and, have everything go to waste by any stretch. But having governments help people who are in need, help people who are left behind because the world development in tech is just moving along so quickly, is, I think, a reasonable approach. I mean, I'm in education. I educate people every day, and I've worked at 2 public universities before teaching at Santa Clara. And I know that there's a lot that needs to be improved in the public education system at all levels. This is not just universities, it's starting with elementary school. And it's constantly underfunded. And there's a lot of people who don't end up getting the highest quality education that they can, which is devastating to me. Maybe it doesn't sound like such a big deal, but it is, because as a result, we have an absurd number of open positions in Silicon Valley for data scientists, for programmers, extremely high-paying jobs that we cannot fill with Americans. How absurd is that? We don't put enough money into our education system, and then we can't hire our own. I'm all for hiring immigrants, but can we at least try to educate our own? Not so to fill up the positions, but to give our own students these opportunities. So I feel like there's a place for the free market, there's a place for letting the market do whatever it does, and then there's a place for helping people who need help, like young people, teenagers.
There's a place for putting more resources into the areas of development that are needed, and right now we're not doing so great of a job. We're doing okay. We can do much better at that. I think, STEAM is a really strong field, that science, technology, engineering, art, math. I think pouring money, resources, effort, mentorship, entrepreneurship, all these different types of fires underneath of STEAM, especially for kids that are 5 years old, 8 years old, 12 years old. Things like FIRST Robotics are really good at it. I think that's really going to be a major game changer in where we go.
But there is another very important detail here. When I was in Waterloo, I had solid 4 years of education in computer science. 4 years, okay? When I had my first academic job in the US in a public university, which I love and has so many positive things, only left because we wanted to move back to Silicon Valley. But most public universities, the computer science education is 2 years. They squeeze computer science into 2 years, and the rest is general ed. No disrespect to general ed. But then when you compete with Canadians who have 4 years of education, and your people have 2, well, guess what's going to happen?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of things that need to be looked at.
Which I don't even know that comp sci was trying to be squeezed into 2. I thought it was 4 here as well.
It says 4 on your degree, but most of it is just when you're inside, when you're a professor teaching these students.
The non-generals is what
the non-generals
are 2 years instead of the non-generals being 4.
But that's a big deal.
Yeah. How many years of it are you studying? Yeah.
So when you teach, when I see the details of the curriculum, the changes that you have to make, the amount of information that you flat out lose, the amount of time that it takes time to become a computer scientist.
Definitely.
It doesn't matter how much information can be downloaded into a student's brain. It's a process.
To become a master. Yeah.
To become genuinely great at something that's genuinely difficult.
Yes.
And to try to squeeze most of that into 2 years because of various reasons.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff we can fix. We can fix that.
So yeah. Okay, so that's potentially a way to address where society is heading with all these different technologies and how they're potentially exacerbating wealth inequality. How do we discuss the ethical quandary around what's going on with the finite resources on our planet? Okay. How about we ask you about, what do you think is the meaning or the purpose of life?
Really? Really? What's the purpose? I don't know if I've had that figured out. I think I went through a lot of changes in my life regarding that. I think right now in my mid-30s, turning 35 in May.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm sort of...
A third of the way to death.
So delightful. I think I've learned that if I can at least get to know myself and do some good to other people in the process, that will be okay. Mm-hmm. I think I've held more religious beliefs as a child, which was very helpful in a way, maybe, to believe that there's a greater purpose that could be easily summarized, and there's a daddy that's going to make sure that everything works out well out there in space. But you know, having married an atheist, my thoughts on it have evolved significantly. I think that there's a lot of beauty in this world, a lot of truth to be learned, a lot of things to experience, and not experience in a kind of simple sense of pleasures. I don't get a lot of satisfaction from just, you know, eating chocolate or other things that are supposed to be pure pleasure, like lying down on the beach. But I get, for whatever reason, my brain has been designed in a way that I get absolutely immense pleasure from discovering new things.
Yeah.
And I've learned more and more throughout my life to listen to what my heart tells me to do, to trust in my own intuition, and to form my life in a way that aligns with who I am very, very deep inside. And it will probably take me the rest of my life to unravel that.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, the closest that I've come to understanding life in a very broad sense.
Yeah, I loved what you said. My brain's also, as much as it is wired for loving sunsets and beaches and helping people and all that good stuff, when it comes up to this new moment of discovery and it goes, aha, when that happens, there's not very many things that are better than that feeling. And then taking that moment of aha and sharing it with other people, which is why we do this, so we can share these aha moments and these great conversations, inspire people to build the future.
I think I have one more thought about it, actually. And a friend of mine shared the idea that the world can be recursive, which means that we are part of this planet in as much as little cells are part of our body.
Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful.
Such as neurons are part of our brain.
Exactly. They even kind of look similar when you look at a neuron.
Such as solar systems are part of the galaxy. Galaxies are part of the universe.
And isn't that great that we're part of this incredible universe? Right? I think that cells in my body are part of something greater, and in that same way, we are part of something greater as well.
The human experiment.
Yeah. We'll see how that turns out.
We'll see how it turns out.
Hopefully it turns out.
I think so. You were mentioning the most beautiful thing in the world. What do you think is the most beautiful thing in the world?
The most beautiful thing in the world? That's a really profound question. I think, in contrast to everything that we discussed right now, I think what comes to mind is my relationship with my son. I'm gonna cry. I feel so silly.
No, you're not silly. Tell us why.
You know, I was pregnant with Alex towards the end of my master's. So I actually had my kid right around the same time as I started my PhD. And I used to tell people.
That's hard work.
Yeah, I used to tell them and then of course we were raising a small baby while I was getting my entire PhD.
Yeah.
And nobody believes me, but it was so much harder to raise a child than it was to do a PhD. Like, by an enormous gap. I could get 5 of these PhDs more easily than to raise a human.
Yeah.
And that bond, which I'm sure has evolved evolutionary because it serves such a good purpose, you know, for us as a species to survive, the bond that I have with my child, it can't be compared to anything else. There's that, and then miles away is everything else. Yeah.
Wow.
That's definitely beautiful.
I love that. Okay, now that is crazy. I don't think, so many people just birth children and they don't even realize that they have to be the God to the child and raise the child into the world really well. And that work is very tough work. It's important for you to do it well, so that way the world is flourishing and not suffering from people having kids, and that it's more difficult than 5 PhDs. I like that quote.
Well, I don't have that, but definitely more difficult than 1 PhD by far.
Definitely more difficult than 1 PhD.
Definitely. More difficult than anything I've ever done.
Is part of that due to you molding the mind of Alex into the world?
I mean, I think some of it is really simple that, comes as a surprise to all new parents, and me included, which is that being there every minute of every day for a newborn is just insanely hard. Even if the child is, thank God, healthy. And although I'll just briefly mention, we had a scare with him. Remember during H1N1 when that was happening? My 1.5-year-old caught H1N1. And I remember being in the hospital, very sick, because of course I caught everything that he had, having pneumonia, and being completely unaware that I was sick at all.
Huh. So you're just so focused on his health that,
well, he was at actual risk. He was 1.5 years old.
Yeah.
But it's the little things, but there are just so many little things. And I'm a working mother. I've pretty much always been. It took a small break to raise him until for a few months after he was born. But then I've always been a working parent. And there are stay-at-home parents who do a lot more because they spend so much more time. So I even have no right to compare myself to how much they do. But it was just so, being pregnant and giving birth as a woman and raising a small baby, and then just the bonds, the nature of the relationship without having to try at all, just how I naturally feel about my son is completely in a category of its own. Now, to be fair, it's the early years that are really hard. He's 9 years old right now, and it has been much easier for a long time. But that bond, the quality of the bond, it only gets stronger with time.
Wow, it's important to for people to hear that. It's to have that strong bond with your child, and that it is one of these most profound realizations and experiences of your life. But at the same time, I've been really weighing that of like having a child and what it would be like to do that process. I've been weighing that with like you described, the amount of energy and time and everything that goes into that versus the energy and time that could go into building value into the world for the other brothers and sisters on the planet. And that's a really tough thing to compare those two things and figure out which one brings more meaning.
So it's a personal thing that you've been questioning. I think it's important to note that having a life, not having children, I think is it's a very much a personal choice. And I wanted to say obviously reasonable, but the language is not even strong enough to convey that. You could have, it's always a trade-off, and it was actually a very, very difficult decision for me to stop at one.
You guys for sure stopping, or are we
I've always thought to myself that if I don't have another child by 35, which is in about a couple of months from now, then that's it.
Yeah.
And that is going to be it. So we have one child, and it's the right decision for us. I feel like I can still contribute to humanity and still do a very good job raising my one child.
With your second child, it'd be more difficult for sure.
It would be a lot more difficult, yeah. And
it'd be even harder for you to build Alysia into the world.
Alysia is sort of my second child, but because I have a real child, his name is Alex.
Yeah.
I know that it's very, very different. Both very time consuming, but not a fair comparison. Yeah. But I think it's such a personal decision, and I think there's a lot of pressure from society telling us what we should be doing. But it's entirely up to each person to figure out how they want to live in many ways, and how they want to organize their family, how many kids. So many private, personal decisions.
Exactly. And to be educated about the options and what they all mean is really important. Do you think that we're alone in the cosmos?
No, we're not alone. There's no way we're alone. I mean, come on. Numerically, it doesn't make sense. I think that the illusion that we even might be alone just ties back to humans believing that they're the center of everything. Maybe there is life right here that I can't even perceive. In order for us to perceive life, we have to share some senses with it. And we have to be close enough so that our rather weak senses as humans can pick them up, even with all of our technology. But the cosmos is vast. There are so many galaxies and so many planets. Of course, there's something.
Well, what do you think that something is like?
I don't know. I'm not sure that there is something that we can even necessarily perceive.
Okay.
Yeah. So
tell us more about that. What is that? Is it in a different dimension? What is it?
I think we just might not share any senses with it.
You don't share any senses with it.
Yeah, I think that could be that would be the greatest.
That's a good way to put it.
Right. if they don't have, if we can't see them and we can't hear them, we're probably not going to smell them or taste them or touch them anytime soon, right? So if we lose those two primary senses, we don't have those in common, that's it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I wonder how that consciousness or their perception systems would build out without the same senses that we have.
Well, that's the issue, right? So we had, and maybe there are some creatures out there that are similar enough to us that we could recognize them, as life. Looking at how humans have, how this planet has evolved, everything that's alive on it, it took a very particular path. Because as a computer scientist, as an AI person, it's all search problem. I worked a little bit with genetic algorithms. Things could have evolved very differently, right? Things could have started off differently. If you seed a universe differently, if the initial starting point is different, you're going to end up somewhere else. But even if you seed it similarly, if things started off with a big bang somewhere else, with perhaps the cell formed, but then from there things could have gone in a completely different path. And it would probably be very difficult for us to hypothesize what a very different path would be like. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It seems very unlikely that things could have evolved just in this way, or even in a way that's very similar to the way that we have evolved. Even when we look at other animals, we see, okay, they evolved very differently, but still, we are, compared to anything on another planet, the amoeba or the zebra is like my sister for all intents and purposes, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be something that might be fundamentally difficult for us to imagine, because we always start with what we're most familiar with.
Yep.
But to jump as far as saying there is nothing at all that's alive, that seems far-fetched to me.
Do you think that those other potential beings could have simulated our universe?
And we're living in a matrix.
Are we in a computer simulation?
I doubt it. I think that also ties back to humans thinking they're the center of everything. Somebody cared so much that they created a whole complicated simulation for us. So
It's like the greatest experiment ever, though.
Yeah, we're not part of anybody's experiment. Nobody cares. We need to get over this really narcissistic view of ourselves. We are the only ones with intelligence. We are the only ones with creativity. Somebody bothered creating a complicated simulation to fool us and see what we're going to do, or steal our energy like in the Matrix. I doubt it. I think all things being equal, we take the simpler explanation. And this is an awfully complicated explanation.
Awesome. So let's send more people to tryalysia.com. Let's get them to play with your songwriting AI.
Yeah, it's going to be free for only a limited time for the next few months, and then we're going to launch. We would love your feedback as well. So if you use it, get in touch with me. Tell me what you think. There's a feedback bar right there on Alysia.
Yeah, and I'm really excited. We might even do some simulation music with Alysia.
Wow, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, let's give that a go. Let's see what that ends up being like.
I'll sing for you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, we maybe get a little bit of, can we get a little taste of the opera one last time?
Oh, a little bit more opera for you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, give me a sentence and I'll be Alysia giving you a random melody of it.
Okay.
Are we alone?
Okay. Are we alone? Are we alone? Are we alone?
That's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, we're so grateful to have you on, Maya. Thank you so much for being our guest.
Such a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alan.
This has been a pleasure. We'll send more people to tryalysia.com, get them to try out your songwriting AI, give you feedback, and maybe use some on simulation. That'll be a lot of fun. Get some music on here.
Sounds fabulous.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Let's do it, and let's keep up these conversations with your students about ethics, about the importance of AI in the world, and teaching them in relatable ways. I think this was a great conversation. For the viewers at home, if you guys found this useful, like, comment, subscribe. Do share it with others. Become a patron. That helps us a lot to sustain our studio and sustain the development of these great conversations across the world. And we'll be coming back at you soon. So stay tuned and much love. Thanks for tuning in.